Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. David Boop, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hi, I'm David Boop. I am an author and editor based out of Denver, Colorado. I have novels, I have anthologies I've edited, lots of short stories, comics, films, a little bit of everything. But we're here to talk about one of my newer anthologies, and I'm sure we'll talk about a few other things too while we're at it. But yeah, I'm the editor of the recently released Permutations, a well-world Mosaic Novel. We're actually calling it now. We're moving away from the anthology title and calling it a Mosaic Novel, which is what it actually is. And so we'll be talking about that during this as well.
Okay, so since you brought it up, I've never actually heard the term Mosaic Novel. So what exactly is that term?
So what a Mosaic Novel is, so back in the day, the golden era of science fiction and so forth, often what would happen is an author would write a story and submit it to, one of the magazines, right? Weird Tales or whatever, right? And would get published, and it was really popular. And so then they would write another one set in the same world, but maybe not necessarily directly connected or whatever. So you'd end up with a bunch of short stories over a period of time. And then a publisher would say, hey, can you do a novel based in this world that's so popular? And they would take all those short stories and then they would put bridges between them to connect all those stories into a single narrative. Now, that was what they would call back then a fix-up novel, right? Which isn't really a kind of a novel at all. Take that concept and move it forward a few decades. What happened then is you'd have authors write short stories, but with the entire narrative already in mind. So these short stories were all interconnected from the get-go. They're not fix-ups. They're not forced to be connected. They're already connected. And that's what happened with me with my Drowned Horse series. I wrote several Weird Western short stories. I set them all in the same town, but I already had 3 distinct timelines I was working from, and a spreadsheet where I could keep track of the stories as they sold, as to which timeline, which characters, monsters, and so forth, so that when the day came along that I would actually be able to sit down and do a novel of Drowned Horse, that all I would have to do then is write stories that fit in between the other stories that built the narrative that I was already working on. It's sort of like a TV series in book form, right? You have, all of these interconnected episodes and then a big 2-part finale. There's an overall arc often in these episodes where they'll drop in something towards the arc, and then there'll be full episodes that are towards the arc, but you don't actually find out exactly what's going on until the last 2 episodes, right? And then sometimes often the first episode of the next season, if they get renewed. So we take that concept, and these Mosaic novels have been coming out for decades. One of the biggest ones is Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, was one that really caught a lot of attention. As I Lay Dying, Faulkner has basically the mother of this family has died at the beginning of the story. And each chapter is from a different person's point of view, her children, her husband, and so forth, as each one of them is dealing in a very different way with the death of the mother, and then the eventual having to take her body across the state to be buried in her hometown, and all of the things that happened during that. What makes Faulkner's As I Lay Dying stand out is not only did he do the points of view of the children and the husband, the ghost of the mother shows up in about 3/4 of the way through the book and has a chapter from her point of view, right? And about how her family is all falling apart and all of that, and how she wished she could have fixed it, and all of these kind of things. So a mosaic is a series of interconnected short stories or interconnected chapters that stand on their own, but also build towards a single narrative. When we first conceived of Permutations, we were thinking just an anthology. But in the actual building of the anthology, we realized that it would take too long for the characters that the authors were writing to explain how they got to this location called the Well World. So I ended up writing a prequel and an epilogue that in the voice of the late Jack Chalker, who created Well World series, to show how they all got to Well World and their legacy afterwards, something he always did in his books. But that way they wouldn't have to each come up with a different reason for how their character got to Well World. Yeah, so that's why we ended up changing it from anthology to Mosaic Novel, is because I ended up writing those prequel and epilogue, prologue and epilogue sections, that it all ties together. All the characters, all of their adventures, everything is a single story. It's a single narrative, even though it's told through many voices.
Now, is that different than the concept of a braided novel?
I don't know that I've heard the term braided novel, so you'll have to explain that to me.
Generally, it's a series of short stories or novelettes or novellas, but it's told from opposing points of view. And it's not always one long one, but it's like it could be a series of short stories or a series of novellas, and then they intertwine them so that way the two plots that intersect, like braiding rope, and they combine them into one full novel.
Yes, that would be, and here's the reason why. It sounds like to me that the braided novel is either written by one author or potentially two authors, whereas in this particular case, this Mosaic novel that we have is actually myself and 8 other authors.
I think what makes it a braided novel is when you're merging separate point of views of the same event together. But
so it could be multiple. I've just never heard the term, but then they throw out new terms all the time.
I heard that one from Kristen Catherine Rush when we interviewed her about her Star Divers series. I'm drawing a blank on the official title, but about a spaceship, like they're diving wrecks in space. Wreck Divers, I think, might even be the name of it. And that first novel was a braided novel, she said, which was multiple POVs.
Well, she would know. But like I said, that term had not trickled down to me yet. I'll certainly look into it. But in this particular case, it's not opposing points of view. It is one point of view after another point of view, after another point of view, after another point of view. Each one of their stories stands alone like it would in an actual anthology. The only thing is that there is this connection that they all end up on Well World together at the same time for the same reason. And then at the end, there's, somebody discussing the legacy they left behind with their characters. So it's not like the plot is dependent on each one of these characters. It is that these are the stories of this group of refugees who end up on Well World, which is something Jack often did with his books. So
would there be crossovers of various characters in other people's works, or were they all completely independent?
Independent, though. I gave them the opportunity to cross over, but generally what happened was because people were different parts of the country at different times, including SP Sumtow, who lives on the other side of the world. There just wasn't a real easy way for them to interconnect with each other. Plus, they all had a really good idea of what they wanted their character to do in their story. And there just wasn't a lot of room for crossover like that. Yeah, but, are they mentioned occasionally? Yeah, but not crossed over, no.
Okay. Well, before we dive in, because this is interesting and we're going to get lost in the sauce if I don't do this first, we're going to do the religion question. So are you ready for this, sir?
I am ready.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Star Wars. Star Wars started it all for me.
Okay.
Yeah, at age 9, I believe I was. That changed my entire world. Star Wars became all encompassing for me. I had Star Wars sheets, I had Star Wars wallpaper, I had all the action figures, I had the comics. And then it wasn't enough for me to just know to watch and enjoy Star Wars. I had to know how it was made. So I read all the making of books and things of that nature. And then as the trilogy continued on with Empire and Jedi, that grew, that continued to grow. And I would get hungry for more information. And not only that, I would end up like watching other movies that the actors were in. I'd watch other movies that the directors directed. I'd watch other movies or TV shows that the second unit director or the grip was involved with, right? Like, so my knowledge of the film industry starts with Star Wars and expands out. So yeah, Star Wars has always been the first place. Even in my earliest storytelling, I would take my action figures, of which I had quite a few, and also like Buck Rogers and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Tron and all of that. I take all my action figures and I would build these giant sets, and then I would find a way to interact their stories. Speaking of crossing over, together, so you could have Tron in the Star Wars universe and stuff like that. And I would create these elaborate stories, and then I'd invite my friends over and then act out the stories with the figures, and they would sit there and patiently watch it. I didn't have a lot of friends, so
That's still cool, though.
yeah. But yeah, I've always been a storyteller, even
right.
back in the day.
That's a good place to start, though. And because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
So definitely Chronicles of Narnia was one of the first fantasy books I ever read. I was given the box set for Christmas one year, and I read them, and I absolutely loved them. I didn't do Lord of the Rings until much later. And honestly, when I read Wheel of Time, I was bored. I never got through, I think I got through 2 books and then put it aside. But yeah, I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, but Chronicles of Narnia is definitely something that impacted on me. I even remember going to see a Christian rock band when I was young called the Dawn Treader, based on one of the Narnia books, and they did a lot of like rock, fantasy, and Christian themed music, which I thought was fascinating back then. So yeah, definitely that. Now, just so we're also clear, huge Star Trek fan too. It's not like I don't also enjoy my Star Trek. I can remember seeing Star Trek. My mom would drop me in front of the TV often at that age, and Star Trek was one that I gravitated to long before there was Star Wars. But there wasn't as much. By the time by that time it had already been off the air and it was just in syndication. So it wasn't until many years later when we get the motion picture and Next Generation and stuff like that love of Star Trek came back. But yeah, I have nothing against any of the other ones.
Okay. One of the crying shames of getting older is we stop asking each other the important questions. So we are bringing that back. And we're going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Actually, I have 2.
Okay.
So my favorite dinosaurs are the Gastonia burgei and the Utah raptor. And the reason why these are my favorite dinosaurs is for a period of time, I was running an online newspaper called Intra Denver. And what we wanted to do was create the feel of a newspaper, but online. Not an online magazine, but an online newspaper. And in that regard, we decided to create comic strips that would be updated daily or weekly or whatever. And I came up with the idea because we had read an article. We'd actually published an article about the Utah raptor, because in Colorado we're not that far from Utah, so the discovery of the Utah raptor was kind of big, and so was reading about that. And then through that article there was a link to the discovery of the Gastonia burgei, and I was looking at these two, raptor and burgei, and I'm like, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And so I created a comic book strip called Stony in Utah about a Gastonia burgei who was always outthinking the always hungry but kind of stupid Utah raptor. And we basically pulled the same Looney Tunes types of jokes that were prevalent, but we did it with this dinosaur theme. And so even to this day, my favorites still are the Utah raptor and the Gastonia burgei. How's that for out of the box?
Well, the raptors are somewhat popular because Jurassic Park fame, but the Gastonia burgei, I actually had to look up the spelling because I never even heard of it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to look up some pictures next just to see, because I'm curious now. So that's the one we've never heard before.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So finally, we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
So I'm a tea drinker. I recently had to switch from chai lattes because I was diagnosed with diabetes. And I don't know if you have any idea how much sugar is in Starbucks chai lattes. It's a lot. So I started brewing my own chai and then adding in, artificial sweetener or whatever that is zero sugar or sugar-free or whatever. Sometimes I'll put a little stevia in if I want, but for the most part, that's the I brew my own chai and add a little bit of creamer and a little bit of sugar, both of them without the actual sugar in them. But I love all teas. There's lots of teas. My office, I've got a rack of K-cup teas, including Rooibos and some greens and a few others up there. So yeah.
Now, you mentioned the K-cups. Obviously, that's one way to make your tea. Do you ever do like the loose leaf teas?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just depends. I'm on the move constantly. I'm constantly with the writing and the editing and the going to the conventions and the things. I'm constantly on the move. I travel a lot. I'm preparing to move in the next year to Oregon to be closer to my son. And in that regard, I don't have as much time as I used to. But when I do have the time and I can slow down, I prefer, and I've had some friends that have tea shops and so forth that I will sometimes pick up some of their blends, which are absolutely amazing. So, yeah.
Well, the cool thing nowadays is it was loose leaf and you had to grab the little container to hold it to do the steeping. Yeah. Or it was the pressed tea like Lipton's, for an example.
Right.
But when the loose leaf got popular as a concept, because you don't lose some of the nutritional value that's in tea in the pressing, but not everyone has time for that. There's actually started to be, you can get bagged tea that's loose leaf tea in a mesh bag, but it's the ease of the bag tea, the benefit of the loose leaf tea. And so I think it's a nice happy medium. So there are times where I'll do I like a peppermint tea when I'm not feeling great, because it's soothing on your throat.
Oh, yeah. And your stomach. Peppermint's good for your digestion.
And when I was in grad school, this is where the opposite of Starbucks was Tea Havana, and they had a tea shop.
Oh, I remember. We used to have one in our mall here.
Yeah, we used to have one too. And they did, they had one that tasted, I can't even remember the name of it because I wish I had kept the bag so I could look it up from other vendors. But I just remember it tasted like Big Red gum. It was like cinnamon and peppermint, and it was just so good. And I haven't found a replacement because that's tea I'll drink all day. I generally prefer coffee, but that one was just so good. You throw that in there with a little bit of German rock sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't advise traveling with the German rock sugar because sometimes the TSA gets a little bit weird about it. If you do, leave it in the manufacturer's bag because I know there's a tendency when you get the ingredients like that to put them in a airtight container. Not so much when you're traveling because it just looks funny to the people that are convinced everything is a drug.
So I'm trying to find the name real quick of my friends who have their tea shop. They're always at Dragon Con. But I'm not able to find it right now. And my brain.
If you can get it to me, we can link it in the show notes and people can check it out. Because a lot of tea companies will actually.
Ruby runs it, and I will find out what the name of it is. I just can't think of it right now.
It happens. Happens to me too. But yeah, some of these places that'll do online orders. Like we had a different author who orders specifically, I can't remember what it was, but it was a really weird combo. So his local tea shop named it after him. So we listed it on his episode.
Nice. That's awesome.
But yeah, so I have no problem supporting local businesses. So if you get that for us before this episode airs, I will share that with the listeners.
Yeah, I'll look it up after we finish the podcast. So
did you grow up around tea, or is that something you came to on your own? Because that's most Americans. It's a coffee culture for the most part.
My mom was a big tea drinker. I mean, she drank coffee too, but she always had teas around. No, actually, it came about because after high school, I got really into drinking coffee, and in fact, I had a really high pressure job where, like during a coffee break or a smoke break, I'd end up drinking like 3 cups of coffee and smoke 2 cigarettes. And back then when I drank coffee, I drank what we called sludge, which was 3 creams, 3 sugars, so that the spoon almost could stand up in it. And that was how I survived that job. And one day I was reaching for something and I noticed my hand was shaking and I couldn't get the hand to stop shaking. And I was like, okay, that's it. Enough of that. And so I stepped back. I also was a big soda drinker, Mountain Dew, for many, many, many years, to the point I actually ended up in the ER twice for dehydration because I was drinking so much Mountain Dew. So I had to step back and I had to reinvent who I was as far as how I take my caffeine, how I choose to relax, and things of that nature. It's funny how these things will show up, like the diabetes, for example, is it causes you to step back and say, okay, so who am I now, right? Who am I now? What am I doing now? How do I keep myself alive until I can write that thing that's going to be immortal and have residuals that will keep my children, my children's children, my children's children rich for centuries to come now. I haven't written that yet, but that's why so I'm this reinvention thing is something that sometimes life forces us to do, and sometimes it's been okay. I stepped down from Mountain Dew to Dr. Pepper. I stepped down from Dr. Pepper to Diet Dr. Pepper. And then from there, I moved on to things like, hint water is a big thing I drink a lot of and so forth. I'll still occasionally have some Dr. Peppers, usually when there's a really cool flavor out or something. But I'm almost completely off all sodas. And then for coffee, went to chai lattes. And now chai lattes are chai and other teas. So, you have to respond to what your body's telling you.
So what is hemp water? I don't think I've ever heard of that.
So the short story is with hint is hint. Yes, hint. It's
okay.
The short story, the former president of Yahoo couldn't find anything to drink water-wise that wasn't filled with either chemicals or a lot of sugar. So she got with somebody to create this, which is just a little hint of flavor. It is made with extract. It is not made with any sweeteners at all. But like this one, this is a limited time flavor, has lemon and vanilla extracts or
Okay.
essences. But there's like nothing that will send your blood sugar up in this. And it tastes like water with a little hint of flavor. So it's not overpowering. It's not sweet or anything. So,
So I work with a nutritionist at the VA because, you know, a lot of veterans get out, they end up going from running and doing all this crazy physical activity to not, and they suddenly have weight and diabetic issues. So they have nutritionists on staff, and the one that I'm seeing actually recommended getting, what do you call it? There's a special water bottle you can get that you can put fresh fruit in it to
infusers. Yeah,
infusers.
Yeah, I see those are quite popular as well.
I've done that with strawberry water for that. One's actually pretty good.
It's kind of like that. But it's already been done for you. So
convenient.
But yeah, they have a subscription service, but they're now available in almost every store: Walmart, Kroger brand, Safeway, Albertsons, all of them. You can get it. You can get it on Amazon. They have like 40 different flavors, and then they'll come out with limited time ones. They also have it in flat water and seltzer water. They also have a vitamin water. They have ones for kids and things. So yeah, they've got, and I've got like my refrigerator stocked with them, and that's what I'll drink more of than anything else. Is this, just because it's water with just, you know, a little extra. It's not boring water.
So when you snack when you're working too, or because
remember the ADHD thing? I have very, very extreme ADHD, and so I need to be drinking or eating or something like that while I'm working, because otherwise I'll forget to. I mean, there's been many times where I've been writing or whatever, and then I'll get home from my office and I'll be like, did I eat today? And realize at that point I have not, which is why I'm crashing. So yeah.
That's a bad habit to combine with diabetes.
Yeah. So I tend to have like some protein bars or some, you know, fairly decent snacks like, you know, popcorn, unsalted popcorn or whatever to, you know, keep me going throughout the day.
I enjoy popcorn as a snack, and generally speaking, it can be low calorie. Where they get you is when they do the calories on the boxes for the popcorn, like if you're getting Orkenbacher or any of the others,
right?
It'll be like X number of calories, and then you realize you've got to multiply that times like 2.7 or some weird number.
Right, the number of servings and stuff.
Yeah,
no, I'm always checking for sodium and carbs on those boxes. So a lot of the just store brands are some of your best. They both taste really good, and they don't have that extra stuff in them. So yeah, I'm a label reader. I've been a label reader for quite some time.
I only recently started, and for the most part, my new rule is if I can't pronounce it, I probably shouldn't eat it.
That's good. Yeah, and serving size is a big thing too. It's like
they'll get you with those.
Learning how little a serving size is compared to how much I was previously eating. Ice cream was a big one of those. It's like, oh, so a serving is half a cup, and I have a bowl of ice cream piled up. Even if it's NSA ice cream, no sugar added, and it's non-fat and even whatever, it's still, that's a lot of ice. That's a lot more than what a serving is. So I actually keep measuring cups, like for cereal, for ice cream, for things like that, to make sure that I'm staying within, you know, a serving or two, depending on, you know, what my food has been like that day.
I got it off of Amazon, but I just got a food weight scale, a food scale to measure, and I use I'll just measure the weight and do it that way. Ice cream, if you get vanilla without the extras added to it, is actually not that bad for you, even if you do a bowl. But you just have to know what you're doing, because you have to compensate for it. But if you thought it was 100 and you find out it's 4, that might have been okay if you allotted for it. But if you didn't, obviously that's how you go over.
So what I have done is I get the plain vanilla with none of the extras and stuff like that. And then I get like the Da Vinci syrups, or there's other syrups that are no sugar syrups.
Right.
And I'll just pour a little bit of it to flavor it up, orange or raspberry or Mrs. Taste does a no sugar chocolate that's really, really good. It's best no sugar chocolate I've ever tasted, and I've tasted a lot of them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but yeah, Mrs. Taste does like a whole bunch of different syrups, blueberry and pumpkin and others. So yeah, which also works good within like the chais or other things like that. But so yeah, variety is the spice of life.
And somehow we always end up becoming the food cast. I don't know how that
I
happens.
know, because we're starving artists, so we're
Yeah,
always
there you go. There you go.
yeah,
Well, I just noticed. So, I hit 40 and I realized I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not running 5 miles a day anymore and hiking and doing all the things. So I'm like, well, crap. Who's that fat guy in the mirror? Wait, that's me. And so when you suddenly start wanting to take care of your health and you have to be intentional about it, you're realizing how much of stuff didn't matter because you could just get away with stuff when you're younger that now you have to actually care about. And so it's a crash course in life, essentially, when you want to start living healthier.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
there's some pretty serious wake-up calls out there. So
absolutely. All right, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the anthology, the Mosaic novel that brought us here.
Okay, sounds good.
What will you do when the world goes belly up? Will you paint stripes on your cheeks, grab your flaming guitar, and enjoy the glorious post-apocalypse party? Or will you gnash your teeth and wail at the loss of civilization? Either way, we've a story for you. This post-apocalyptic collection has 15 great stories, each with its own spin on our future. Dive right into From the Ashes, a Bayonet Books anthology, before the future becomes now.
All right, thank you for sticking with us.
Okay.
Really.
I've done some post-apocalyptic. It's not my normal genre, but if it pays, I'll do just about anything. So
a lot of times for me, it's I'll just get an idea in my head and I'll write the short story and then I'll be like, oh, okay, what genre is this? Yeah. And if I can't find an open call for an anthology, I'll just host my own because I really do love short content. Like I grew up reading the Reader's Digest versions of some of the classics when I was stuck on my sister's Girl Scout trips because I was too young for Boy Scouts, but too young to be left alone. So They call us tag-alongs when you're the sibling of the Girl Scout. Right. And so they basically, in theory, I could have participated, but girls had cooties. So I was in a corner with a Reader's Digest book. That's how I discovered the love of the written word. So I'm kind of passionate about short fiction, even if it doesn't always make me money. It's just a passion project.
Yeah. So for me, I don't know if you remember the 1 Minute Mysteries. So there were these volumes that came out called 1 Minute Mysteries, and they were actually written by Donald Sobel, the guy who wrote Encyclopedia Brown. Okay. And he wrote these, and there are a lot of this like closed door sort of thing, but they're all very short mysteries, like maybe 2,000 words or less. And I loved those because it taught me a lot about how you boil down in a mystery to the key elements, right? And so many years later, I wrote a flash fiction mystery about a temp worker who, while out on a temp assignment, finds out about a murder and has to decide what to do about it, right? So I built up this whole story about him having been once a private investigator, but then did something really stupid, lost his license, and nobody will hire him. And so on an assignment, he finds a murder. And it's kind of like Murder He Temped. And that was the genesis of the Trace Walker Temporary Mysteries, which appear on a website called gumshoereview.com. And I've done like 50 of these now. And they pay. So, it's nice. But I've done other flash fiction. I've done short fiction. I have over 100 short stories published now, heading towards 200. So it's something that is a passion of mine. I love doing short fiction. Sometimes with my students, because I teach and tutor, I'll get a call for an anthology and I don't have the time to actually do it. And so I'll ask one of my students if they want to co-write with me, and we'll generate an idea, and they do a lot of the legwork and I do the editing part, and it's instruction for them and a credit if it sells. to the anthology, but I just can't. I get so many anthology invites that I have to be very choosy about which ones are the ones that I can commit to. There's been some I've committed to, and then I haven't been able to find the time to actually write the story, and I've always been very sad and disappointed when that's happened. So.
Yeah, at this point, I realized I've said yes to a lot, and I had to start writing down what I was actually agreeing to. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Sure.
Yeah, I have a busy board. It's actually laying on the floor right now. But they keep track of my novels, my anthologies, my short fiction, my comics, my films, my website that's being rebuilt, all of that. I have to keep track of all of that. I do a comic strip. It's currently on hiatus. I also run a t-shirt shop. There's a lot of things on my plate, but what it basically is when I can't, like if I hit a stop on something I'm writing, what we would call, kind of a writer's block. I don't believe in writer's block, but if you can't figure out where the next step is for the story, I just go to the busy board and I see what else I'm supposed to be working on right now. So, yeah, that keeps me going. And a lot of it is short fiction. So I've been doing a lot more with Cthulhu stories, Lovecraftian stories lately, because those have been selling. So, I'm not going to complain about that.
Do you, outside of thinking purely mercenarily, do you have a favorite genre to write short fiction in, even if it doesn't necessarily the bestseller genres?
Well, yeah, Weird Western is my go-to. I love writing Weird Westerns, mostly because, they all add to the legend of Drowned Horse, this town that I created. But I also love a good cross-genre noir. So your sci-fi noir, your paranormal noir, those are so much fun. I'm doing a novel that has, I'm co-writing a novel that has elements of fantasy and noir in it. The Trace Walker mysteries, is a big thing. I love sitting down to one of those. And yeah, I grew up with so many different influences. I love all of it. When I was reading, I was such a voracious reader. I was reading, a book, every couple of days, and I would just like, give me the next one, give me the next one, give me the next one. And where I lived in small town Wisconsin, really the only place that I could get books was a local convenience store had this little spinner rack, right? And the books, whatever books were on that rack was what was available to me. So I'd sometimes ending up buying the second volume in a trilogy or something, and then have to try to find the first and the third volumes later because they didn't show up. And same with comics. Comics was the same way. Whatever they had on that rack was what was available. I can even remember the Three Baggers. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Three Baggers, but they used to do 3 comic books in a bag. And sometimes they would be a mix of Marvel and DC, but most times it was either Marvel or DC. And when I was reading Star Wars comics, that was always like one of the ones facing out. And then there was another one facing out. And then there was always a surprise one in the middle, which you wouldn't know what it was until you opened up the bag, right? And you brought it home and opened it up. So I would end up with I was really big into the Invaders for a while, Captain America. So it'd be Star Wars, the Invaders. And then in the middle would be something like Power Man and Iron Fist, or The Thing 2-in-1, or Marvel Team Up, or something else that maybe wasn't selling as well for Marvel. And so they would stick it in the middle, hoping that people would get into it and then buy more of them. So yeah. But you when you're talking about small towns, you end up reading what you can get your hands on. I had friends who would sometimes share stuff back and forth, and that was kind of cool. So yeah, it's a lot of different influences: science fiction, fantasy, mystery. All of it is all up in here, right? That's how come my first novel, She Murdered Me with Science, this one, is a sci-fi noir, right? Like,
Okay.
because I thought I was going to be a mystery writer at first, and then I woke up from a dream that was clearly a science fiction based murder mystery. And I'm like, oh, well, why did that happen? So I need to invent a detective, a scientist detective, to figure out how this person in the dream was murdered. And so that's how that one came about. So, yeah. Uh, like I said, I mean, Westerns, weird Westerns is my big go to, but anything noir based or mystery based is my next
Yeah,
favorite.
I was never really into mysteries, mostly because I like the not knowing. I'd cheat and read the end, which actual mystery readers were like, "How could you? That's heresy."
Right.
But that's just never my preferred genre. I don't do that with any other genre. If I read it, I don't mind waiting to the end. But for whatever reason, with mysteries, I'm just like, let me get to the end.
Right.
So I know a lot of people that love it. I did grow up watching Murder She Wrote with was it Angela Lansbury was the character?
Yeah.
And I've seen the joke, what if she was the serial killer because all the dead bodies dropping around her?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You got a question. And it's like, is this Murder She Wrote or is this Dexter? Right? Like, what's going on here? Well, then you must have loved Memento then, where it's a mystery backwards. So you get the ending first and then you find out the beginning. So did you
I
ever
haven't actually encountered that one, but now I'm going to look it up when we're done with the recording.
Oh, Memento. That's Christopher Nolan's first film. That's what put him on the map. Yeah, it's a film. Guy Pearce, I think, is the lead, and it's a film that plays out backwards. He's got a memory issue. Something happened to him, and he can only remember certain things like a shorter period of time. And so the movie plays out in these clips of from the ending back to the beginning, so you can figure out how he started down this path to where it ended. So
interesting. I'll have to check it out.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So we brought you here today, though, to talk about your Permutations, a well-world Mosaic novel.
Correct.
So I'm going to throw the cover up there first. And I really do like the cover. It definitely harkens back to the classics.
Yeah. So that's Sean Ricks. And what I wanted to do when I talked with him about the design was what I wanted was in all of the other covers for the Well World series, it's really focused on the alien characters, but there's very little focus on the world itself. And since we had so many different alien characters in this, what I wanted to do was give the world front and center. Now, for those of you who don't know, Well World is basically the petri dish where godlike aliens created all the races of the universe, right? And they had this planet, and it's made up in little hexes. And this planet, they would try out different species under different conditions to figure out which ones were the ones that would be able to last the longest. And so they would create a race, and then they would give them a technology level, and then they would give them an environment level. So you might have something that looks like a Yeti in a mountain region, and they have no technology. But you also might then have something like that Pegasus, which would be it might be in a semi-tech, which is up to steam power, right? And then you also have the high tech, which you can see on the side with the high tech building and the little commuter rail there. And that might be somebody who looks like a walrus, right? Or a walrus with 6 arms. And they would try out all these different races, and then they would send them off out. They build a planet for them with these conditions and stick them on it. Humans being one of them, right? And so they would create these conditions, seed a planet, wipe the slate clean, build another species until they had the whole universe populated. And then they themselves de-evolved themselves into their creations and went out into the universe. But they left the petri dish, this well world, running with the last of the species, right? And so it's just been going on for millennia, multi-millennia, just existing. And in the very first book of the series, which is called Midnight at the Well of Souls, a guy who's got it's a science fiction. So he's got a freighter that's taking some people from one planet to another. And he gets a distress call and he has to land on this planet. And there's one of these gates that can take people to Well World. And so he and the people that he is with all end up there. Now, this is where the catch is. Even though they're all humans, once you go to Well World, there's no way to go back, right? You are stuck there. So these humans go through processing, and the computer, the Well computer, decides where they need somebody in the world, like what hexes are short on population or whatever, and they will send you, and they may change your gender. You will definitely wake up as an alien, right? Like one of the first ones that we meet is like a centaur, like alien creature from one of the hexes that was a woman that was on his ship, right? Another one is a giant bat, and one ends up like a fish-like creature and stuff like that. So you have all these different people who were once humans wake up in a body that's no longer human. And the Well World adjusts your brain so this becomes natural for you over time. You still have your original memories, but you can't ever think of yourself have ever been human. You just know that you used to be, but you feel natural as a Pegasus or a centaur or a fairy like creature or whatever, right? Um, and so you're stuck on Well World in this new body. All except one person. The pilot of the freighter wakes up in his own body, in the human hex, and he has all his memories and everything like that, and he doesn't know why he's still a human. But as the course of the novel goes on, we discover that there's a big secret where he's concerned, and the longer he's on Well World, the more he remembers of that secret, right? And that's Nathan Brazil. That's the main protagonist of the entire Well World series. There's 5 original books, 3 additional books, and then 2 that are considered kind of non-canon. But Nathan Brazil and eventually a woman named Marva Chang are the 2 main protagonists of this series. And they show up in most of the other books. So, yeah. And a huge fan of the late Jack L. Chalker, this Midnight of the Well of Souls. In fact, part of the reason I'm working with Arc Manor is they were publishing a legacy edition of Midnight of the Well of Souls. And we found out what a huge Jack Chalker fan I was, asked me if I was willing to do a new introduction to the book. So I'm like, yeah. And so I wrote this new introduction, and the estate and he liked it so much, they said, if you had a project, what would you want to do? And at the time, I'm like, I'd like to do a Well World anthology. I'd like to reintroduce this series to a new generation of people. I'd like to produce like this thing where you have these people wake up in new bodies and have to solve a problem while adjusting to their new bodies. And he's Shahed Mahmood, the editor, owner, grand poobah of Arc Manor, said, great, we love that idea. So we started on the process, but it was a long process. It was very laborious because I had to create a Bible that referenced all the alien species that are on Well World. If you take both the carbon-based and the non-carbon-based, I think it's like 1,611 species, but they only ever focus on the carbon-based. There are some mentions to the non-carbon ones, but all of these characters were going to wake up in carbon-based bodies. So I had to write a Bible that had every bit of information about the galaxy that existed before they end up on Well World, and then Well World itself, all the different alien species that they could choose from. And when it boiled down to it, was like 200 different species that they could choose from in this Bible. And they chose very well because the stories are awesome. So,
So can they, the character wise, do they get any input on what they become and where they go?
yeah, yeah, they chose. So they chose the alien species. Like they chose the back. So here's how it worked. They created a human character first and created a backstory for the human character, but they don't really write that character. I write that character. That's in the prologue. All right. But then they write that character waking up in their new bodies on Well-World, right? And that's the twist there, right? Is and why this is more of a mosaic, because we work together on all aspects of this, right? But they gave me feedback as I was writing their human characters of what their human characters would say or do in these particular circumstances that I established. And then I edited their alien characters according to the way that the characters were written by Jack and so forth when they were written.
What I was asking was the characters from, like, you're Bob, you're in the story. Does Bob get a say when he goes to the well world about what Bob becomes?
The actual characters. No, they generally do not. Now there is one exception to that is these two characters go through together, and they basically are wishing as they go through that they stay together, and they do. They do end up staying together, and they both become the same type of creature, even though they have different memories. But I'm not going to tell you any more about it than that. But no, they have absolutely no say on it. However, the well computer, which basically maintains the entire universe, right? It's basically the server for the entire universe. What the well computer knows you, like it knows you from the moment you were conceived until your death. And so if you're dealing with something in the real world, it will often convert you into a alien species that can best deal with whatever traumas or things you were dealing with in the previous world. All right. In real space. So,
do most people that are going into the well world realize that's what they're stepping through, or do they just sort of stumble in?
So there's an orient. Most of them don't know what they're getting into when they end up on Well World, but there's an orientation that happens before you step through the gate. And so you're told what's going to happen beforehand. And the thing is, you're given no choice. You have to step through the gate. Once you're on Well World, you can't stay in basically the zone, which is the arrival area. You can't stay there. You have to go through the gate. Everybody goes through the gate. And then you're processed, and then you're logged in as a citizen of Well World. So that's important. But going back to the art real quick, because I never finished that thought, was the idea that I wanted to focus on the different aspects of Well World, the non-tech, the semi-tech, and the high-tech, which we've never seen before on any of the other covers. And so what you have is you have this dividing line in the middle, and if you see, it kind of peels off a little bit. And so each one, this is a hex, and it's the edge of a hex, and you've got a non-tech, you've got a high-tech, and you've got a semi-tech, so that we could showcase, because there's not just one, like there's a lot of alien species. There's not like one focal alien in this. So we wanted to really highlight that. So, yeah. Okay. So anyway.
No, I really did. I dig the art. I think it looks cool. It definitely has that nostalgia vibe style to it, like the kind of stuff that you'd see in the 80s on the art without obviously the gratuitous nudity.
Yeah, it's it is a fully painted, which I own. It's at home. But Sean Ricks did the painting of this, and so it's not digital at all. yeah, it's pretty impressive. We really wanted to, if we were going back to Well World for the first time since Jack's passing, we wanted it to appeal to that audience that's used to seeing those kind of covers, right? And yeah, so we had to blow it up a little bit for the thumbnail. There's a lot more behind this picture. There's aliens, and then there's like all sorts of high-tech stuff and so forth that didn't end up in the thumbnail, but it's a really cool image. I cannot.
For the paperback and hardback versions of this, does the wraparound cover more of the art?
No, unfortunately, it was designed as just this. It was not a wraparound. It's just that, like I said, we had to blow it up because the full picture didn't look great on thumbnail, which is sometimes. I'm not an art director. It's my first time kind of doing that with something that wasn't my own book. I've done it for my own books before, but I've never done it for something like this. And so, yeah, there was a learning process I had to learn, and thumbnails. And I thought the thumbnail looked good to me, but to the marketing people, it did not. And that's just how it goes. Sometimes it's a learning process. And like I said, I think it looks great, and they think it looks great like this as well. So, yeah.
Now, this is already published, or is it going to be publishing soon?
So we came out with call it a preview edition. And that was because Balticon in Baltimore, Maryland was Jack's home convention. And we wanted to launch it at his home convention. So we got it out in time for that convention. The problem was that it does say a Well World Anthology on this cover. And we've since talking with marketing people and so forth, have determined that it would be better off if it was branded more as a Mosaic novel, because that's really what it is. Anthology is more of a misnomer where that is concerned. So we're going back and we're fixing it. And there'll be a new cover and a new release, I think it's a new ISBN for it as a Mosaic novel. That is not out yet. But you can get this version now on Amazon. It's a limited printing, but while there are still copies of it out there, you can get it. And then the new version should be out relatively soon. I got the revised art and so forth for it recently. So I think that's going to be out before too long.
So we've talked about the anthology. We've talked a little bit about the world, and obviously you can't give spoilers. So before we wrap this up, though, you haven't told us how you found Well World and what your first thoughts on it when you discovered this IP.
So it's funny. All right. So Midnight at the Well of Souls. It's on a bookshelf in a bookstore, right? And you look at that. I was a huge Indiana Jones fan. And so I'm like, I pick it up thinking it's something to do with Indiana Jones, Well of Souls, right? Midnight at the Well of Souls, the Well of Souls, right? In Indiana Jones. And then I read the cover. I'm like, this has nothing to do with Indiana Jones. So I put it back. And I didn't think about it for a long period of time. Then I was visiting one of my cousins, and she is a huge avid science fiction fantasy reader. And she had all 5 of the original books on her shelf. And I said, oh, yeah, I was going to pick that up. And then I saw it didn't have anything to do with Indiana Jones. She goes, it's an incredible series. You need to read it. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, if you're a science fiction fan, you need to read this. So she took all 5 books off of her shelf and handed them to me. And I was traveling at the time with my mom. And she's like, read these. And I did. And I still own those books today. But I became a huge fan. And then when he did the next trilogy, I was in line for those. And even the 2 non-canon ones he did later, which he admittedly did for the money. Not so much. But none of the characters from the original even show up in those 2. But there's 10 books to this series, and I love them. And for a long period of time, about every 2 years, I would go back and reread those first 8 books, start to finish. And I did this for years, and I read all, well, not all, but I read a lot of Jack's other stuff. One of his books called Demons at Rainbow's Bridge, which is the first book in the Quintara Marathon, I list as one of my favorite trilogies of all times. Demons at Rainbow's Bridge is amazing, and the last book, 90 Trillion Fausts, is absolutely one of the best books I've ever read in my life. So I love Chalker. I love the Well World series, and there's not really much as far as spoilers go. I mean, I can tell you, we've got some amazing authors in there. We've got S.P. Sumtow, or Sumtow. Some people know him as Sumtow, and I can never pronounce his last name, Sukarat. But he's a very famous author, composer, screenwriter. And he was a friend of Jack's. So, inviting him in was important. Catherine Asaro was Jack was one of the first authors she met in the beginning of her career. She also from the Baltimore area, and they were close for many, many years. And then we got, and this is one of the cool things, Jack's daughter, Samantha, has started writing. And we actually, she hasn't written a lot so far, but she's starting to write following in her late father's footsteps. And we paired her with the very well-known, very amazing Jennifer Brozek, and they co-wrote a story together. And so we've got Jack's daughter in here as well. Some other names include Electra Hammond, who actually edited the re-release of the Midnight at the Well of Souls series for Bane way back in the day. She was a proofreader on that, and she's a huge Jack Chalker fan. So we got her in there. We have Sam Knight, who has done a lot of media tie-in work, including Planet of the Apes, amongst others. We've got Marshilo Rockwell, who also has done a lot of media tie-in work. Huge fan. Davis Ashura and Arlen Feldman. And and Keith Alexa, who used to edit Intergalactic Medicine Show. He's amazing writer and editor, and he did a phenomenal story. So yeah, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but right off the top of my head, I can't think who. But it is a phenomenal anthology filled with all sorts of showcasing how weird and different this world is. No two of the characters are anything alike. When they wake up in their new bodies, like one's a plant, one's a kind of a mer person, one's like a semi-flightless bird. One of them is a bear. Another one's a sphinx. Catherine Sorrow's story. Her characters are living sphinx, the things that inspired the sphinx in our world. S.P. Sumtow's story is a race that speaks in music. They don't talk, they sing. And because he's a composer, I really wanted that. That's one of the few times I kind of asked for something. And I said, listen, you compose symphonies. Can you give me a species that speaks in music? And he goes, yes, I can, because he's good. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there. And then surprises for the classic Chalker fans, classic Well World fans, in that, I bring a lot of his most famous characters back in the prologue and the epilogue. I set it between the prologue is right after shortly after the first novel ends, and then the epilogue happens right at the final battle of the fifth book. So yeah, there's a lot for the old fans, but you don't have to have read any of the other books to enjoy this, because everything is explained out for you. Highly recommend this if you're looking for something, kind of science fiction, maybe a little sci-fantasy, but you want to explore just how creative people can be when given a task. Like, you got to create a human, and then you got to turn that human into something else, and you have to do it within a certain amount of words. And they answered the call, and they kicked serious butt on this.
So last question, how come, just because I'm curious, how come you said there are 2 books that he wrote that are not canon?
So a lot of times an author will finish a series and be done with it, but then a publisher will roll up a wheelbarrow of money and say, hey, we want another book in the series. And the author goes, well, I finished the series. And they're like, yeah, but can you unfinish it? And what authors will do in cases like this is write a side story or a non-canonical story that's sort of set in the same world, but the world is slightly different or whatever. And that's those last 2 books are. It's well-world, but none of the characters from the original series in there, and even some of the alien races are slightly different. Remember, this is a time where authors didn't necessarily have computers with big memory to store, for example, 1,611 alien species, right? He had to go off of his memory or going back and rereading the books or whatever it happened to be. So sometimes there's a few like discrepancies in character descriptions from the first books to the last books.
Okay.
But these last 2 just kind of stand on their own. They're still well-world books, but they're not tied in with the other 8 stories.
So
doesn't mean they're not good. They're still good because it's Jack. So
okay, so they're less. I mean, did he consider them non-canon, or did he just consider them spinoff?
Well, here's the thing: he died before I ever got a chance to ask him that. Now, his you could probably ask his wife, who's still alive, Eva Whitley, Eva Whitley, and she would be able to tell you whether or not he considered them canon or not. But he puts in the beginning of the books a very long explanation of why he wrote them and how they don't necessarily fit with the other books. So you can just read that introduction and find out. I'm not here to defend or detract from his decision process.
No. And marketing has changed, and you are right that technology has allowed us to track things maybe more accurately than we used to.
Yeah.
Which definitely colors the way stories are written. But you can also, like, the way if you read some of the books from the eras, like the 70s to the 80s, the 80s to the 90s, 90s to the aughts, there are subtle differences in what readers expect and what they want.
Oh, very much so.
And so, I try not to judge books against modern expectations. I judge them against themselves.
Social mores change.
Yes.
Our style of reading changes. We are now in an era where we want faster results from our reading. The slow burn doesn't appeal to the majority of the readers as much as it did when I was reading as a child and a young adult. The people want to get to the action much sooner than previous. And that's okay. If that's what you want, then we'll adjust accordingly. It doesn't mean that sometimes we don't also put in as much of a slow burn as we possibly can in our writing within within the expectations of the editor or publisher or whatever. The other thing is the turnaround. Publishers want you to turn around books so much faster than they ever did before. And it's, 20 books to 50K or just even, like lit RPG, romantic space opera, romantasy, and so forth, because people are hungry for it. Feeding that hunger as quickly as possible is important. I am not a fast writer. I might have mentioned ADHD, huge busy board, things of that nature. I'm not a fast writer. It takes me a couple of years to research one of the Drowned Horse Chronicles, by the way. That's this right here. it took me a couple of years to research this, and I'm just starting to work on the second book now. So because I wanted to sell my reality before I sold my fantasy. So I make sure as much of my history is accurate as possible in this before I start messing with it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
before you break the rules, you got to know what they are.
Some publishers aren't happy with that, right? Like they want you to boom, 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 have the next one ready, have the next one ready, have the next one ready. And that's not my style, right? And that's created a lot of tension and so forth with certain publishers. But they've got a market to respond to. I always hear people complain about Black Friday, and it's like Black Friday was a response to us. It was not something that necessarily the stores started out with. It wasn't until people started losing their holy crap over things like Black Fridays that the whole paradigm shift with businesses to create, Black Friday sales, and then Black Thursday, and now Black November sales or whatever, right? Like, because we told them we wanted more of that. The same thing can be said of fiction, right? If you're not seeing a lot of quality fiction, or you're seeing like a lot of novels just being shit out one right after another, whether you enjoy them or not, if you don't, well, that's a direct response to what the people are buying, what they're reading, what they're responding to right now. And we have a responsibility. We can either go with that trend, or we can continue going along our way, the way that we do it best, provide the best quality stuff that we can, and just know that we may never be, somebody famous, right? Or have huge book sales, because people get bored if your next book isn't out 3 months after the first book, right? So we'll see what happens. But this right now is just so much fun. Is working in Jack's world has been an honor and a blessing, and these stories are incredible, and we're hoping to get them in front of all the right people for award season, because there are stories in here that will break your freaking heart, and others that will make you shout for joy. That's what's Well World is all about. All of these alien species forced to live next to each other, and there's a story in there for everybody, right? And you can imagine yourself as one of the being transformed into one of these characters that are in here or in any of the books, right? It's like, what is the character that connects with me the most? What would I become if I stepped through the gate, right? And that's what Permutations does, is it asks that question. What would you be if you stepped through the Markovian gate? What kind of species would you end up being? So, yeah, something to think about there.
All right, so if people wanted to follow you on the wild interwebs, and as usual, all the links will be in the show notes, but how might they track you down?
Well, davidboop.com is definitely the easiest for finding my website. It's currently going under a revitalization. It's getting a little nip, tuck, maybe a butt lift sort of thing right now. Somebody's behind the scenes working on that right now. But I'm on pretty much every major social media. I know you threw a few new ones at me, but I'm on Facebook the most. And Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Twitter X, whatever. I dead named it. I'm sorry, X, and so forth. Threads. I've got a profile on all of them, and eventually I'll get to a point where I can post on all of them simultaneously, so I can feed your need for me, if there is any. Of course. I have published through some major publishers like Arc Manor. Baen is a big one. We were talking about this earlier. My Weird Western anthologies from Baen. I'm flashing these right now because that's money. So now you can tag them. And you can find me on Bane.com. I have 3 weird westerns, 3 space westerns through them. I'm also in a couple of anthologies they put out, and we're about to announce at Dragon Con probably my next anthology with them, which is another shared world similar to this one I did for Well World, but it's not somebody who's died. It's actually somebody who's still quite alive. And I'll be working on an anthology on a character of his that he's wanted to see more focus on over the decades. And so we'll be giving that character that focus. So, but that doesn't get announced until probably Dragon Con. Maybe World Con in Seattle, but most likely Dragon Con. And then, so Bane.com, you can find me, arcmanor.com, all the social medias. I have a YouTube channel for some of the movies that I've written. I've written for 48 Hour Film Festival a few times. So some of my short films are up there. I've got a new comic coming out that I co-wrote with Kevin J. Anderson about giant mechs used as anger management therapy called Travaillant Rising. That will be coming out probably to Kickstarter next year. I just did a Green Hornet anthology featuring Kevin and Timothy Zahn and Bill Willingham and Keith DeCandido and a whole bunch of other really big name authors. That was through Moonstone. So if you like your pulps, you can find me on moonstone.com. But davidboop.com is where the central hub to all of this is going to be.
All right. This is the part of the interview, dear listener, dear viewer at home, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, and it really does matter. So please do your part. It does help the algorithms send the books that you like out to other people, so the authors are incentivized to write more of them. You can find
Smash that like button.
Absolutely. You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTube, the TikToks, the Twitters, the Spotify, Discord, Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades Podcast at gmail.com for professional purposes only. People save the shenanigans from Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it flows out of their eyeballs, people, and then we will swim away on a river of Java goodness. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, a link is in the show notes. Podcast Grunts is the discount code. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. You help keep the lights on. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thanks for coming on, Dave. This was a lot of fun.
I really appreciate you having me. This was a hell of fun. I had a good time, and anytime you want me back, I'll be here. All right.
Outstanding. Can't wait. And with that, we're going to hit the end button. Don't cuss yet, sir. Wait for it.